Hello! We are coming to you with salty hair and feelings. I am Lotus Fire.
Hello, I'm also salty-haired. My name is Irina, and happy to be here.
And I wanted to have Irina come and talk with us, about play on this fine evening here in Australia, wherever you are watching this. Irina and I used to teach at a school in Nashville, Tennessee, some 18-month to 2.5-year-olds, and that's how we first met. We're both really passionate about childhood and play, and since we met and taught together, Irina has gone on quite the journey with play and education and childhood and all of that. So hooray that we've made it here together. And do you want to talk a little bit about your journey with that?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Since starting working with children, I believe 6 years ago now, to where I am now, play and the idea of play and what it means and how to practice it and how to allow it to happen, it being structured, not structured, and all of that has been a very interesting and fascinating journey, and not just with children, but also with adults and how play affects me and the adults around me as well. So I'm happy to share some of my...
Cool. So why do you think play matters?
Because of everything. Play is everything. In my opinion, it is the source of creativity, human connection, collaboration, problem solving, any ideas and anything that has ever happened in the world, I believe, has started at being a play. It has started with experimenting and just seeing how things go, and then from one idea to the next, as play, a whole creation comes. And the idea is that it's about the process of play and not the product. So when you go into a play, or when or witnessing play happen, is often starts with one body-led experience or moment, and that experience leads to another one and another one and another one, and therefore often play is very structured, but it comes from a source of your inner being, a body-led activity. So it's quite complicated, but yet not at all.
So I think that often, especially as adults, play feels very foreign and like weird and like, oh, that's childish. And there are all these kind of beliefs that come up around play. So I want to talk about some of the challenges and the ones that are probably rooted in childhood and what happens to a lot of us around play as children. So even the first school that Irina and I worked at together was a much more structured environment, and just kind of it was like a really lovely school and environment, but still fairly traditional. In some ways it was, a bit more out there, but in other ways still really quite systematic and looking at the outcomes instead of the process of whatever is happening for each child. What have you seen in the differences between like the school there and now? Like, what are some of the kind of barriers that come up against play?
Structure and adults in general. Adults are very much an obstacle when it comes up to children play. We often come in with an agenda of wanting to teach or wanting to put our idea out there. So in planning any activities, Go to swim is about learning how to swim, or putting scissors and paper is often about the kids learning how to cut paper. And often children will learn all of these things if we allow them to have the materials and the products and they create from their inner being, and not necessarily if you want them to cut with scissors, and if that's your goal, it can be an obstacle, but also you can still have a certain goal and let children explore. And often just picking up rocks could lead potentially to cutting with scissors and developing those motor skills and such. Definitely adults are part of the obstacle, that we don't allow them to experience the environment with their innate ability and capability and wisdom. Is often how we want them to learn, and that doesn't really quite work, and is often when we find ourselves with challenges and problems or behaviors that are not acceptable. I would say that's
and I think the thing with adults is that so many of us have gone to school systems that do focus on the end result, and that there's a set time for play, and play is like at recess outside in like often an environment that is not at all set up. The best environment for play is nature, being in real nature, not some park, and like a playground. Although those can be, like there certainly play can happen there. Play can happen anywhere. I think even in the darkest depths, children find ways to play no matter what the obstacles are. But then we often believe that play is wrong. The way that we innately play is wrong, because we should be learning how to cut with scissors, or we should be doing this, and we should be able to recite the ABCs, and we should be able to do these things. And instead, if we listen to our bodies and what our bodies innately wanted to do, we would probably develop these things, and not only develop in the way that people like want us to, but to be better problem solvers, better creative thinkers. Like children, if I think about it, like my child and children growing up now, if they're allowed to play and interact with their environment, they're going to be so much better suited to help solve and deal with the problems that are coming up, instead of me saying, oh, well, these are the things that I think you need to know right now. Like, he may not need to know any of that in the future. And, especially with climate change and things like that, like if we want creative solutions, we need play, especially play that is in nature and on Mother Earth.
Often another obstacle that can come, and this is, guided towards children, another obstacle is the environment as well. We often put these objects into the environment that are not open-ended. That is a toy of a bus. So that bus can only be a bus. It does not allow for the children to create things and imagine things. The imagination is nothing. You could still do, make the boat go down on the river, but that's it. It's very limited.
And even often a parent, if you were using the bus and pretending that it was a dinosaur, somebody would say, no, that's a bus, because you want that child to know that that's a bus, instead of trusting that like their play and imagination there is important. We don't value it and trust their innate, the culture that they create and the ways that they create.
Whether when you allowed an open-ended material as a stick or a rock or anything, a rock can be anything. It can be a ball, it could be a bean, it could be a ship, it could be a rocket ship. The ideas are just completely out there, and it really allows the children to fire up that brain, to have a think and imagine and create. That is definitely one of the things that I've observed and noticed.
Yeah. And so the reason that I wanted to talk about play in empowered healing is because of the experiences that many of us have had around play, and that our society doesn't value play for children or adults, especially adults, but even children, it's not a valued and respected thing. And often there's so much fear that comes up, and, all these things, and parents aren't owning what's happening for them, and aren't helping children to build the safety and trust in their own bodies. And so I think that if we can reclaim some play in our lives, it also gives so much capacity for just feeling alive and being able to create and connect with other people and connect with our environment and problem solve. And often when we begin to play, we don't have any idea what we may be healing or what we may be interacting with or what might come up for us. But I believe that medicine is all around us, and especially through play, we can find really meaningful and healing moments in ourselves and in our environment around us that can be really, really life-changing. So yeah, what has been your experience with adults and play and yourself and play?
There's one thing that I want to mention about play as well, is that there are so many research papers and studies done on play of how important it is and how, we can learn from it, how we can be creative and all that. I do want to say one thing, is that the most important thing about play is that it's fun. It's really, really, really fun. And that's the most important thing. And often if you still think of play as like an objective to achieve something else, it stops being play. So, and adults especially are often very disconnected to that. And yes, when the society around us tells us that it's childish and it's not important, and especially for adults, like you're not children, why are you playing? I often look at adults and things and environments that they enjoy the most, and a lot of the adults do enjoy being around children and watching them play. In a way, they're recreating their childhood, or they're replaying things by watching them, and often, for some people, they think that's enough. And another part is really the beach. I often think about why people like the beach so much, and really it is all play. You are allowed to lay down and relax. You're allowed to go in the ocean and move your body in a free way. You're allowed to, play in the sand. It's kind of like an expected thing. And you're allowed to jump around and be a little silly because you're at the beach. You're people play volleyball, people go surfing, you crash into the waves, there's all sorts of play that's really socially acceptable at the beach. But even if you went to a park and did the same stuff, people would be like, well, that lady, oh, that's weird. She's she's laying there in her underwear at the park, Yeah, just the other day I was out with Calico and he was playing this playground, and there were climbing structures, and my body just kind of led me to it. And I definitely still feel that resistance of looking around if there are people looking, and even, with me letting play and all that, I'm still kind of resilient and kind of looking around and making sure nobody's, giving me strange looks for playing. But I definitely climbed up there and I played. And yeah, it's just, a way to feel so alive. Yeah, one thing that I love to do is, if I'm going for a walk with Calico, I'll just kind of collect, what my body sees. And I used to love, my sister and I would make all sorts of potions and paint things and probably eat lots of things that weren't really designed for eating. And yeah, just playing with nature stuff. And so I'll kind of go and collect stuff, and then when I get home I'll just create something with what I've collected. And it can be really simple, and it can also be I think play is simple anyway, but there can be a building also. There are also lots of art therapists and stuff like that do a lot of play work as well, and open-ended, sandbox stuff. And it's really amazing. But I think it is that thing of not having an attachment to the outcome of I'm playing to heal this thing, or to figure out this thing or whatever. It's really about trusting this deep inner knowing that knows what you need and knows what what is meant for you in that moment, and what will ever come out of that is what's meant to come out of it, instead of when children play, they're not I have this problem that I want to solve. They just begin, and then problems come up and they solve them. And those problems, are useful for their life and what they need to develop and grow and everything. Yeah, it started with me, reclaiming the play, because I noticed how important it is with children. And I noticed my earning, or my inner wanting to play was present. And the way I believe to show the importance of play is by doing it. Just go and play. And it can be very difficult and uncomfortable. But my one way of starting to do it is by remembering what my first or my most important play memory in childhood was. And I often think about this, and we often replay it in all of our workshops, is one of my favorite things that I used to do was climb trees with my cousins and look for nests and just be up in the tree looking up high. And it's just, or picking apples from the trees. I was always up in there when I was a kid. So that was my way of like, okay, I know this was very important, and it's like in my body. I love climbing. But because of our surroundings, we often don't see adults up in a tree, and it's weird and all of these things. But I, kind of forced my body a little bit at the beginning to climb the tree. And then one tree led to another and another. And now I love climbing trees, and I do it all the time. And that leads to other ways of play. Like today at the beach, it all started with like jumping in a puddle. I just saw a puddle and I was like, oh, jump. And so I jumped in the puddle and I was like, oh, I'm gonna bury my feet. And then I buried my feet. And there was not really that much of a thought process. It's really allowing your body to just move in a way that it wants to move. And our body definitely oftentimes doesn't feel safe to move as play. Little things to add into your routine or my
and to build that trust.
Has been very, very important. And my puddle jumping ended up being in the ocean and swimming and jumping and kicking the water and dancing at the beach. And
then she took off her pants and was slapping them in the ocean, and we were running around in the ocean, crashing into the waves, and like just feeling my body move in whatever way it's moving, in the waves and stuff. And then like it's such especially when it is, truly safe, and like especially as an adult now, like I have a pretty safe life. I live in our society, which is not always safe, but I also have cultivated community and friendships and relationships around me that are safe. And so to not only like be able to play as an adult, like I also have a different level of safety as an adult because I don't live in the abusive home that I had, and I have this new environment. And so getting to play in that and let my body do what it wants to do and build that trust of like, when I have challenging moments and I don't know, like that I can carry on and I feel like I'm in a deep, dark space. Like if I've built more trust in my environment, my body, like my body has some knowing in my mind and my heart and my gut that there is something out there, that there is fun out there, that there can be rest and play and joy and safety, and in terms of building trust with the body and your inner wisdom, play is the perfect space to do it. And it doesn't have to be certain. That's the whole thing. It doesn't have to feel super clear, and like you don't have to feel like you're like the best at play, and it can feel a little bit weird and uncomfortable, and that's all a part of it. So I'd love to know what some of your first memories of play are, or important memories of play. And I think reflecting on that can be really useful. And what comes up around play? Like what were the messages, how did adults react to play around you, and what opportunities did you have in nature? And how does play come up in your life? Do you have any other play things you want to talk about?
There was one thing that I wanted to kind of mention. When I first started really looking into play and all of these, radical ways of looking into play, which are not radical at all because they're, anyway, I kind of sort of had an artist breakdown. And I just stopped doing art at all because often I realized that my art was based on having a product and not trusting in the process of the art, which I did enjoy, but it was still, I had the idea of to produce this, and so these are the steps that I'm going to do it. And then just looking with children creating art, art is play. it's just is. It leads your body leads the way, and you just create things one step at a time. And I was not doing that with my art at all. So I just stopped for a long time until I was like, okay, I'm ready to play with art. So I just got a bunch of supplies and even put like a sheet down in my apartment and put a lot of like different crafts and arts and paint and all that, and just I even got dressed to like expecting some sort of way to get messy. And it does not matter. Like, the final products obviously did not turn out what you would call art these days. But the process of doing it can be very, very healing, and you feel alive, and it's fun. And that's what I want to do with my life. I want to have a fun, creative, exploring life. Yeah.
And it's so much freer than I think so often we try to fit into these boxes that society has, and we try to be this person, this thing, have this job, and we're just going for these like slotted systems and like having the car and the house and these things, and it can feel so hard to come back to like, what do I really want and who am I and all of those things. And I think play is just the perfect fucking place for that. And another thing I wanted to mention about play is that sex is a great place to play, whether it is self-sex or with others. And that can feel so like we have so disconnected from the playful nature of sex, I think. And it is so often about the end product and about the orgasm. And opening up to just playing with my body has been really, really profound for me. And with my partner, to take off the pressure of this outcome and of whatever the thing is, that has also been huge and weird and uncomfortable and like, ooh, like what are we doing? Yeah, I think it's really, really amazing stuff. Yeah.
Another way that I've incorporated play, or even just, there's so many things that we do throughout the day. They can all be play. You could getting dressed in the morning can be play. Cooking dinner can be playing. You can put play in the shower. Like, you can just, stomp your feet in the shower. And another one is like when I go out or when I'm putting makeup on, which I often don't, I think of that as play. I am playing. I am getting, it's dramatic play. I'm getting dressed up and I'm, transforming my body in a way. So that's also play. I think we often do certain things that could be play, and just kind of acknowledging that and, allowing yourself to be more in it and be more free and not like just put the makeup on really quick, but just be like, oh, I'm going to play with my face now. And,
and opening to that experience as it being playful and like opening up to the kind of sounds and what's around and like what, like instead of just like, going to the automatic, like putting on the mascara, just like taking a moment and being like, what do I want to do next? And like, how do I want to do this? And how does my hand want to move when I do this? And like, just stepping into the body in a different way and coming back to the moment, and leaning into that trust and that kind of inner voice that's inside.
Yeah, but mostly just, trust your own journey, and it's going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to want to do it at first, but just, a few things, and just acknowledging as you're doing and washing your hands in the morning, I'm going to splash a little bit of the water, and that, kind of.
And often it's our inner children who don't feel safe to play, which is so deeply sad. But coming back to, you can talk to that inner child and say, I get that this feels really scary, but adult me is stepping in and I'm really curious about this. And I'd really like to take an opportunity to allow you to play in a way that you haven't before. And so, you're safe to do this. And I'm just going to explore a little bit and see how it feels to do this. And we have a couple of videos of Irina playing that we'll add on to the end of this. And just to get an idea of like, what play can look like, and dance is a great way to play as well. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to the Play Masterclass, and We love you lots.
Thank you.